Look, I'm sure a lot of you have wondered if my kid is good enough to play at an academy like Barcelona or any other famous Spanish club. What would it actually feel like? What would we need to do? What would the road look like? Well, except for the first question, we're going to try to answer the other ones today. And because I got to admit, the level of this conversation, we went for reinforcements. And to my surprise, we replaced Matt and not me. So today is Patrick Ouckama is in. And some of you, I hope all of you remember Pat from our earlier episodes. Pat, a true soccer mind, massive soccer experience. And best of all, not a dad. So he helps balance this conversation. Yeah, I know. Hey, by the way, Matt is not exactly relaxing. He's on a full-time soccer, full around Europe tour with his son. So he's learned nothing from this podcast. Today's guest is Nil Congost, a coach from Barcelona who has worked at the highest level of environments in Catalonia. He built his own development model around what he believes many young players are missing in the modern game. He also helped place a number of young talents in some of the top levels of professional Spanish football.
Yeah, really good conversations with Neil about soccer in Spain, about development, about the culture. What he and EOS football is building is an experience that sounds very unique, where players can get a taste of what it's like to compete and try to succeed at some of the highest levels in football.
Neil, bienvenido to Chasing the Game. So before we dive deep and go into big ideas, let's give the listeners or the 4 or 5 viewers that are there the short version of your path. What is the environment you coached in, the families and players you worked with, and what led you to build the EOS in Barcelona?
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here. It's a real pleasure. So I've been coaching, it's been over 10 years. First, I was coaching in different levels in Barcelona, different levels, different ages. Throughout this process, I was seeing that there were some things missing, which I'm sure that we're going to be talking about. I created a new program for players so that they could work onto these specifics that within the environment here in Barcelona, there's plenty of things that we do, but some of them can be done better or differently. So we tried creating something that could be complementary so the player can reach his highest performance. So we coach in clubs like Mataró, which the clubs are semi-professional. I was also coaching in the highest divisions here in Catalonia, different ages and so on. I saw that my place could be somewhere else besides the clubs. So that's where we started the academy.
Neil, can you just right off the bat, because you're talking about obviously what the clubs do provide, where you saw some things missing that, services you provide. Can you speak more to that?
Yeah, sure. So what we are doing is to provide full service to the player that can help them reach their highest performance on the field and outside the field. So we do individual training, we do group training, we do trainings based on fundamentals, trainings based on competition aspects that the players need to dominate in such environments that we have here. We work with sports psychology, we work with conditional strength and training, we do some nutrition also. We're doing lots of game analysis, which is key for us because that sets everything. We combine everything, so we create action plans for the players, the assessment of the player to help them reach their highest performance, which at the end, that's what this is about, and to help them get closer to their dreams and to guide them within the journey.
And where have you seen your players progress?
Well, I mean, we've been so lucky to coach players that now they are reaching the highest levels. FC Barcelona, for example, players like Tony, like Guille, Fernandez, that they are now just in between the first team of FC Barcelona and the second team. We've had players who have been chosen for the Spanish national team in the younger ages. Plenty of them they are doing already with the Catalan squad, which Catalan squad, along with maybe Madrid and maybe the South one, are the ones that always compete for the highest ranks. So we've been very lucky to have these kind of players, and that's been key for us to also develop.
That's amazing. Sure. I want to talk as a parent here in the United States. I mean, the idea of Barcelona or Catalonia, first of all, they're mixed a lot. But is there such a thing as Catalonian football?
The level in Catalonia is very high. Maybe we don't have as many professional clubs as they do in Madrid. However, these local clubs, they feed Barça like every year. We have Girona, we have Espanyol. Those clubs, they can compete with any club in the world. in terms of the development process. There are many other clubs like Sabadell itself and so on that their level is very high and they compete 1-1 against Barca.
But what is Catalonian football?
Well, at the end, everything goes to Barcelona, right? Because it's Barcelona. At the end, it's the cathedral. It's what everyone knows. The best players in the history have been part of FC Barcelona. So everything at the end relates to Barcelona. But at the end, Barcelona maybe it's the top of the pyramid. You say, but in order to have this top, to have this ladder, you need many other steps before. So I think that these local clubs, they have to get credit for the work that they do onto creating the players that eventually they're going to make it to FC Barcelona.
The idea of Barca or Catalonia, is there a definition for that ideal player? Is it possession? Is it technical quality? The football intelligence?
So at the end, I don't think there's a definition. It's a consequence of the level that we have. Because at the end, I think that football or any sport, if you bring it towards the highest level, it's adaptability and it's surviving, right? So the fact that the level here is so high, the fact that the rhythm is so high, that makes the player have certain resources so that he can cope with the environment. So then it creates this sense, because that's what worldwide it's known, right? That here football is played with less touches, that here football is played with your brain, not that much with your feet, which at the end it's a combination of everything, of course. But yes, it is true, because at the end, people who really understand about the game, they say that football is about time and space, right? So the higher the rhythm it is, the less time and space the players are going to have. So the faster they will have to play. It is at the end the consequence of us having a tougher environment for the players.
Neil, you just spoke about how the work that the other clubs in the region do, the work that they do, and we obviously developing players that end up on a club like Barcelona. What is your relationship with those clubs when you're working with these players on an individual basis?
Sure. So first, there's a friendship, because at the end we've been, we know each other from the past. So the relation is very good. We want to stay neutral, because then we can feed the players. We can help the players in the way they need, because we are for the players. We are not for the clubs. So we try to have this networking in which we collaborate with any club in Catalonia. There's friendships. There's, of course, like mutual help, because at the end, anything that we do, it goes towards the same direction. So I would say that relation is very good.
You worked with American kids, right? And we're going to get into these camps in a little bit. But when you see these American kids, or you met some of the families, what do you think draws them into this idea of Barcelona that you see that the parents react to?
Well, I think that Barcelona has been so successful, not only for the titles that they were able to win over the last decades, but mainly for the way they won them, right? So I think anyone who likes football wants to be involved with this. There's this love for the game. There's many, many ways to win, right? I think that Barcelona was able to create a way that went beyond the results. And right now, the Barcelona itself, it's not only enough to win, you need to win in a certain way. And that's what I think that when we talk about Barcelona being more than a club, there's values involved, but it's that you have to be loyal to the way you want to get that, and probably also to the national team in Spain also.
Yeah, Neil, you've worked with US players. What do you think is the difference for if you drop an American player into that environment like that? What do you think is the shock for them?
Football here in Catalonia, Spain, culture is very big, right? Any player here plays football. There are other sports, but mainly any kid plays football, and that's been happening for decades and decades. So the more people you have doing something, the higher levels you get, right? Because also more people doing that means that the system needs to grow, because you need to provide a service. So then the institutions, the clubs, the governments, we have like plenty of fields. When people come here, they are amazed how many fields we have. Every field is full. Club has plenty of teams. You see football. What I was going to say, we see football in the street, not that much. I'm pretty sad about this, because, we are losing the street football, which I'm very sad, because I think my generations have been like the last that we were actually playing in the streets. It's true that on the weekends, almost every family, they go to a field because they are playing or they're seeing. And because we talk about the federated level, but then there's plenty of other football, more social, and it's plenty of football. So only by that increases the level. The biggest difference which is that we have relegation. Here, the fact that we have relegation, it makes that the clubs, they really must work to keep those divisions. Because if they don't have divisions, they don't have good players. If they don't have good players, then they cannot, like create players for the first team or sell them or whatever their model is. They really have to work, and that brings the pressure to the coordinator. It brings pressure to the coach. It brings pressure to the player.
Right.
So then the environment, everyone has to perform. We can discuss if this is the best for, let's say, a 7, 8 years old, which is happening. Maybe we can talk about when this environment should start. But the reality is that this environment is here. You cannot compete against that. You might like it more or less, but we have this environment. So that makes that if the player doesn't perform, then another player will come. And it's very based on performance. That really makes that the level keeps increasing, right? Then we have this culture that many players after playing, they coach. So also we have more coaches. So more coaches means usually better coaches.
So it's really interesting because I'm thinking about a lot of the, and I know, Patrick, you know that too, a lot of the American kids who go with teams to play in Europe for these tournaments, or parents who have this idea of what European soccer is, and now specifically in Spain. But Coach Neil, do you think that it's more of a romantic idea of what European soccer or Spanish soccer is for the American parent?
At the end, football is very emotional, right? So the dreams are part of the emotions and what you're seeking and so on. I think that talent is talent, and I think that you need to work and shape this talent. Do I think that the environment we have here in Spain, based on what I explained before, helps the talent grow? Of course, because it challenges the talent. If the talent is not challenged, then you don't grow the talent because it's enough. Whatever thing you do, it's going to be enough. When you come to an environment that it's more challenging because you have less time space, they're pushing you, you have less time to think, you have to be more precise, more accurate, and so on, then yes, you need to start doing different things. So usually what we see, because we've been also very lucky to have very strong talents from North America that are so good, they actually bring something different to the game here. They had to face these challenges, right? Families, what they were telling me is that we came here because he was not being pushed in a way that he is being here. Does it mean that anyone who is gonna come here to Barcelona is gonna become professional or, of course not. The percentage of players actually make it in Barcelona, it's probably the worst place possible because you also have more players trying it, right? And the level is higher. So Barcelona, for me, it's the best space to develop, yet it's one of the hardest to actually make it. Football is about experience. The more specific that your repetitions are during the trainings or your daily basis, then the easier it's going to be to transfer and relate to the game, right? So if you are at the end going to play in an environment that you're not going to have time and space to think and to execute, then how do you expect to perform at that level if you have not practiced that level before? So that's why I think that it's the system that sets the level here that the player here can develop better than probably others who don't have the system.
Neil, how do the coaches in Spain, for example, help the players navigate that system? It's ultra competitive at every level. Everyone's trying to make it to the top for a limited number of spaces. So that's a big job, obviously, to help them maybe even more psychologically manage those challenges.
I had one person who helped me a lot when I was starting to coach, Lucas Gonzalez. He's now coaching in the first level in Colombia. He taught me that the coach mission is to guide the player, right? Guiding the player is not telling the player what to do, right? Guiding the player is showing up different options that he has and then creating like good scenarios, like where he's going to be able to experience the reality of football. We're talking about the mental aspect, the technical one, the tactical one. For me, one of the main things that the coach needs is to build specific situations that the player is going to have like enough inputs so that the player can learn from the mistakes and he can learn from which kind of actions help them have better success, right? Any drill needs to have a challenge. I always tell the players, they must win every drill. They must have to think how to win the game. And the game can be a rondo, it can be a passing drill, it can be a possession game, it can be anything. But if you are setting these challenges, then you're making the player think, then you are making him gain habits that then he's going to be able to incorporate on his assets, on his playing style, and then you're creating the player. If you are only like telling him, no, like, now you gotta pass, now you gotta run, you gotta pass to him, you gotta do that, maybe you are helping in the short term, but at the end, you're not really, making an impact on the player in the longer term. And then, of course, mentally, I think that the player goes through a lot of pressure for how things are done. So I think it's very good to also release sometimes the pressure from the player. It's a balance. You need to pressure him because he needs to, he needs to be pushed. Yet at the same time, I think that he needs to have this time to create. One thing that happens and sorry if I'm extending too much.
Oh, no, I want to hear. It's better than hearing me talk. Go ahead.
So one of the things, one of the main things that made me go away from the clubs and try to make my own thing to help the players is that many coaches, they want creative players. They want player makers. They want players who can take the ball, who can dribble, who doesn't want that, right? Who doesn't want a player who can go past 2, 3 players and score a goal? But then, however, since we have lots of pressure and you gotta win and blah blah, then whenever one player, of course I'm talking about highest division, right? Whenever one player takes some risk and he doesn't do well, and let's say he loses the ball, and that creates a counter attack, which means risks, which means that we can concede a goal. Then what is the coach or most of the coach gonna do? They're gonna yell at the player, right? So that's crazy because you want players in a certain way, which you are then not helping them sometimes be like that. So then sometimes you are kind of like even like spoiling the kid. You know what I mean? So that's why we thought that we needed to create these safe environments where the players could actually like try, like experience and, like try to do things that maybe they are not so confident to do with the clubs. So then they are prepared to do with the clubs. And with this, I don't mean that the clubs are bad for the player. Again, like you cannot separate both things because you need the players to be pushed because that's what creates the environment for them to grow, right? But the bad part of it and the like the space that I think that we gotta help them is onto building this like self-awareness, and self development that they can actually grow from.
It's just such an interesting point. Neil, I've worked at a couple of professional academies here, and when you're out scouting, you see a player and you see how confident they are, and then sometimes you bring them into the environment and they've lost a little bit of that because they don't want to mess up. So it's an interesting idea for them to have access to a space where they can try things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it kills me and we try telling the players like, if they sign you, that's for something. Don't try to be mediocre, right?
Yep.
But that like the level of like personality and character and identity that you gotta have in order to say like, hey, I don't care, I'm just gonna do, and if I fail, I'm just gonna get it back and keep trying. Not all the players are made like this, and that's one of the main and biggest differences I think from the players that make it and the ones that they don't.
No, I mean it's amazing to hear you speak, and again to what Pat was also asking is that I'm taking a quote that you said that talent is not challenged, and we also had a coach, a Dutch coach here a few weeks ago, and he talked about this concept for young kids called self-regulation, where before training they challenge the kids to work on things that they think they need to work on, so they take ownership of the things that they need to be challenged on. When I think of the United States, we both agree that in potential, there's infinite amount of talent here, right? There's so many kids. There's a giant missing link. So you don't have to solve it now, but is it coaching? Is it philosophy? Is it ID? Is it the culture? Is it access? When I hear you speak, just blows my mind.
I think that at the end, it's many things altogether. For me, the main thing is the system itself. Like, like altogether, like the fact that there are many players playing, so you can choose many more players. There's more competition because what I sense, what happens in Canada, United States, and so on. I know that the families they move a lot to be in the best academy. They try to like. I've met families with very talented players that they have like they themselves they create like some group of with the best players in this region and this area and this state and whatever, and they play together because they want to create these challenging environments for the kids, which is great. But maybe you can like put all the best players together, yes, but who are you gonna play against? Because that's not enough. That I know that happens in Canada. I know that at least some families they shared me this idea also, because it's not only and for example, I know that there's been like academies with the idea of okay, let's sign people from Barcelona and let's put them in this country, and let's develop them as they would be developing in our state, right? But it's not true because you need the competition. You cannot put things apart. Like, of course you're training and that's good, but you train for a game, and usually you have the game, right, and then you do things well, you do things not so well, and you want to fix the ones that you're not doing so well, right? So if you don't have like this evaluation part, then you everything falls apart, right? So I think that having more players play is one thing. I think that's changing in the United States, which is it's very good. I think that the moment more players play, you will need more coaches. The moment you need more coaches, then you need that the coaches will have to be better, because maybe if there are not so many players to coach, maybe any coach can go and say, "Hey, I'm a coach. I'm gonna start coaching." But then here in Spain, it's very tough to be like to coach in the highest division. You gotta like coach many years before, and you're gonna be doing that with very low salaries. You only do that because you wanna improve and because you love the game or you love the sport, whatever. Um, so I think that at the end, I think it's like a whole concept, like a whole cultural thing that I think that is changing in the United States. I think that it's changing, at least as far as I'm concerned. I think it's changing, and every year we're having more and more players coming from the United States, Canada, and so on. And the level is very high. Today I was having one player, from a professional club there in the United States, and I was telling the lad, I mean, your son is extremely good. Like he's very talented, but yes, you gotta shape this talent.
What do you generally see are the challenges for a kid from North America entering an environment like that?
So, okay, so of course those are stereotypes. And there are stereotypes that I want to go against. It's that the player from the United States, he won't understand the game. This is being said here. It's maybe I'm that's a bad thing to say here, but this is something that typically the coaches will think. Of course, there's the language barrier, which it's difficult to understand, like, because football is communication, and it's very difficult to play at the highest level if you're not understanding the language. That's true. It's difficult. It's a challenge. Um, but like, I see players coming from the United States that they have like a huge and a very deep level of awareness and understanding the game and so on. I think that there's lots of talent in this. Of course, the more you put a player onto such environments, the more you challenge him, and the more he will have to, like, to cope with the playing style. But yet, I would say that there's a big part of talent in the, like, understanding the game. That's one side. But yes, usually, like, what are the main challenges that the players have? So, for example, we see that most of the players that we have, they have tons of individual training behind. So they are very good on technical drills. They are very clean and good. They do so many touches, and they do them like so fast, and they do like this drill and this other. Whereas our players, they don't do that. They don't have like so many dribblings. They don't do like sometimes like so many touches.
Are you saying? Sorry, are you saying the American kid has more touches?
Yes,
Or-
sometimes,
oh.
like individually, if you give him the ball and you say, okay, you gotta do this drill and do like as many touches in this amount of time. Probably, well, not probably, but sometimes we see players that like, technically, they will do it like sometimes better than the players we have here. However,
Right.
when you place them in a game, then sometimes what we see is that every time they have the ball, they need to do the play. They need to do these 2, 3, 4 touches and then boom, do the pass. But football, as we said before, is time and space. So maybe those 2, 3, 4 touches that you did before making the actual play, which was passing, it cut the play. So that the player you were gonna pass to, now he has less time and space. So you did not help the player. You wasted right. So that's what I mean, that we see players with very, like, hard work and ethics, probably like better than here, with more work behind, with more technical abilities and so on. But they need to know how to use it. That's why I like using the word shape, because you have it, but you gotta shape it in a way that it helps the team. And there's a concept in football, which is like, sometimes you do things for yourself. I don't know how to say it in English, but you do movements so you get the ball, but then you do also movements so the teammate gets the ball. In Spanish, it's benefactor. Um, so this concept, I think that it's not so well developed yet in the United States. I see that the players, they usually they try to do the best for themselves, and of course, I don't want to like say something which is like very general because of course not every player is gonna be like this. But based on the experience that we've had over 100
Yeah.
players from very good academies and teams, we sometimes see that if they play maybe one or two touches, maybe for them they will feel that it's not enough. But maybe that's what the player was asking. So that's the best decision possible.
Patrick, maybe it comes to the American kid is very good versus cones, while the Spanish kid is very good versus other players.
I think there's something to be said for that. I mean, I've seen a lot of players, at professional academies and who have personal trainers who are really, really technical. And sometimes those players are good in the context of the match. And sometimes the decision making that Nil is speaking about, it's just such a complex environment at that point that you're not dealing with when you're just executing a technical activity.
Any decision you make is based on experience, right? We were saying before that the more specific your repetitions are, usually the better outcomes you're going to have because you practice it more. Actually, one thing that they say from Pep Guardiola, when they say that he's the best coach, when players are asked, they always say that he's so good because he tells you what will happen before it happens. That explains this idea of the specificity. Because if you put the environment, the context, the place that every player is going to face on the weekend, if they were able to try and see, okay, that works, that doesn't work, that helps me, that doesn't help me, then the player, when he does it, like without thinking, he's gonna boom, like do that and do that and do that. So it's the same with what I was saying. If the player is used to repeat one same thing plenty of times, then what is he gonna do in the game? He's gonna do the same. If you're making the player dribble like 20 times the cone and do this dribble, then he's gonna do that. And maybe the player is not asking him that, but if he was not challenged, in a real situation scenario, then how is he gonna know? He's just gonna do what he's been doing.
I say it as my son is in private training right now, running around cones. So I'm going to cut this interview short.
No,
and I'm going to go pick him up.
No, I don't mean that. I don't mean that at all because we do it also. We do it also. It's just that it cannot be everything. You need to know what you're doing. You need to know what the training is helping you for. Because like football here, along with the Barca methodology, there's many areas that make the player. There's the like coordinative one, which is like the control of your body and the ball, which is like any technical action. There's the condition, there's the mental, there's the cognitive, there's the your capacity to relate with your teammates, to do like certain efforts in certain moments. Like there's many things that are all together connected and that make the player. So dribbling cones or running or whatever, it's very good for one specific thing. But if this specific thing, which in this case, dribbling cones, it's the coordinative area, if this is not related with the mental, with the strength one, with the conditional one, with the cognitive one, which is decision making, with relating with the players, with everything, then it's no use of that because you're not going to be facing cones. You're going to be in an environment that you have pressure, you have to decide, you have to have certain strengths to execute your ideas. So you need to have like a whole thing all together. And that's why I think that the Barcelona's methodology is the best because what we try is that anything we do, it must have a transfer to the game. Maybe we split it onto like small parts, but the global thing, it needs to be connected to the game. That's very important. If you're training without a purpose, you're not training football, you are training ball. But it's not football. It's not the sport. So you must have a purpose. The player has to know what he's working on and what is he working it for. You know what? Like not only how is he gonna do it, but when is he gonna do it? Why is he gonna do it? How is he gonna do it? At what pace? Like this is very important. You need to give this context to the player. If not, you're wasting time. You're playing ball.
Nil, how do you think about it in terms of from a developmental standpoint? So you use Pep Guardiola as an example. But Pep Guardiola is planning to win a match on the weekend, so there might be a specific thing. When we're talking about developing players, we need them to answer questions a lot of different ways. So how do you structure training sessions where the variables are going to be different because you're not preparing for one match, you're trying to develop this player over time?
That's very important. You should not be actually preparing for the game until the player is like 15, 16. Which that's here in Spain for the system and so on. Sometimes it's not like this because the games are very important also. But at the end, I think that everything is connected. I mean, you wanna win, but to win, you gotta play well, and to play well, you need good individual performance, right? So usually the way it is done is that you divide the training sessions during the week in your micro cycle. There's different areas for different outcomes. So usually also related with the intensity that you're trying to bring to the players. For example, there's no sense that Friday before the game you're gonna make the players like play in a tight space like 10v10 with a lot of intensity, because that's you're creating intensity like on your head, right? Because you're gonna be tired for the game, so that's no use. Of course, if you come from the game, you don't want Monday to be the most demanding physical training, right? So this is the same for the purpose of the drills. So, for example, if Monday we are tired and we don't want spaces where many players are interacting all together, because we don't want to be tired because they are trying to actively we're trying to recover, right? Then we can use those spaces to work on more like individual fundamentals. So usually the first days of the week are more focused on the player, whereas the days in the middle they are more focused on the team. So you have more players, you can have higher levels of intensity, and so on. And then on Friday, usually the way it is done here, you prepare for the game, you have like more strategy. Usually you also do like many situations where the players have to be you work on the pace and the speed and so on, because that helps you also like have higher levels of speed than on the game. So it's something that it's a very good question, because it needs to, in the microcycle, it needs to be related.
Sure. I'm asking more about the younger ages, right? Where you're thinking about the long-term development of the player. And so what does it, we use the example of the players, dribbling through cones, or the players making decisions on the field based on what they see and what the problem in front of them is. How is that foundation structured at the younger ages, independent of the match this weekend? How are we building the function of the player to be able to make decisions on the field?
Okay. So I think there's two things. One is how you temporize. Is that a word? How you decide
we can make it. I've said so many words that don't exist in this podcast that really the standard is very low. Don't worry.
No. So what I want to say is that you need to decide which content does every player based on his level of brain development, like cognitive development. Like a kid who is 7 years old, he won't understand any system because he is selfish. He only thinks on himself. So why would you be working on the pass or control even if he doesn't want to pass, right? So then you gotta work on what? On the dribbling, on driving, and that's it. And you gotta let him crash and so on. After they have the ability to understand that maybe, like sometimes relating with a teammate, it's gonna bring like better success than doing it alone. Then you start working on the pass and on the control, and you start showing him like how to create a passing line and how to solve like basic superiority situations like 2v1, like 3v2, right? And then as they get older, then you can start like adding the concept that sometimes their movements won't be to get the ball. Sometimes the movements will be for the others to have more space. And then you help them on which movement they need to do in every situation, right? Which is like, whereas you need to be doing like an emergency pass, or you need to be doing like creating a line like behind the opponent, like stuff like this. So depends on the brain development that you need to relate. And then that's in terms of like methodology. And then within one same practice, usually what you want to do, that's another like fundamental of the methodology that we use, is that there has to be a scale from the first drill to the last one, which by the way have to be related. What we do at the end of the practice is that after the practice, we always do the feedback, and the player must know what he specifically worked on. If you ask the player, what did we do today, or what did you learn, and he is not able to answer, your training is well, I mean, I was going to say it's a failure. Maybe not, because it's so that there are players that they are able to explain you with words and then they don't do on the field. And there are players that don't explain you with words, but then they do it, right? But usually if the player doesn't leave the training with a very specific idea, it's that you were not clear enough, that the drills did not accomplish the purpose. So usually what you want to do is you want to start with drills that are less complex, so the player starts understanding, what he has to do. That those are called like conceptual drills, because the concept, it repeats a lot. So here you want lots of repetition on the same action. So he experiences like, okay, now with the left foot, now with the right foot, now with this kind of pass, now with this other kind of pass, and then you put the same drill, like the same concept, but now on a challenge where more players are involved. So it's more complex. So now
Yep.
he's doing the same, but he is doing in a small game, right? And then you
Right.
do this small game, then you convert it on a like more global, or more like a bigger scenario, like closer to the game. So then you have less repetition, but the quality of the repetitions are higher because they are closer to what then you're gonna experience in the game. And then finally you have the game, which is it's where you evaluate. Actually, in the game, you don't tell the player what to do. Usually, as a coach, you sit and you see if they are doing that. They are doing that. You have your answer. He understood. He's not doing that. Then maybe you did not do it properly, or you did not do it enough, or I don't know. That's also like the goal of the coach, and the like the what also like makes the coach be like this level or that level, to recognize what's happening throughout the process. Because never like the training you program, you think it will never like happen 100% as you thought, right? There will always be differences on that.
First of all, the fact that Matt is not here right now, this would be his dream interview, and to get both of you guys here, I mean, this is so wonderful but overwhelming, because it's none of this connects to most of the football experience that my kid has had through the years, and it's not. We've been through wonderful organizations, but this kind of methodical, systematic idea, cohesiveness, is just really admirable, and it brings me to the next part. Patrick and I've talked about this a little bit, but all you've discussed so far requires, and correct me if I'm wrong, it requires time, requires systems, requires culture, understanding of the game. What do you hope to achieve with these short-term camps in North America?
Yeah. So like first is to give the opportunity for the players to be seen by coaches here, by some of the best coaches here. Then of course what we want is to also explain that there are options to be part of this system, to at least experience the system, to eventually come maybe. But then of course, like being there, there's two parts. One is like the experience, right? Like being coached as, let's say, like a Barca player would be coached, right? Or a like professional player would be coached in Spain. That's one. And then of course, like that means that they will get like the same information, they will be challenged the same way, they will be pushed the same way. So, but this, of course, like since you don't have like that much time, and at the end, like try or developing, I think it's about like creating habits that then the player can have and he can repeat, right, and incorporate in the way that he plays. That requires time, as you were saying. So maybe in a camp, like 1 week camp or 2 weeks camp, it's not gonna be enough. You're gonna set like the fundamentals, but then the player is gonna have to work on that, right? So what we try to accomplish on these camps is to the main thing that we do is give an assessment to the player, like give an actual evaluation of how is the player doing, but then work onto like action plans that they can be done afterwards. Like based on like, let's say, like the assessment that was given to the player. There's ways to evaluate the continuity of it. So mainly what we do after it, it's through the game analysis. Because of course we cannot coach the player if we are not with him, but we can be like watching the games and, like trying to set the challenges as if they were here.
Pat, what do you think about those kinds of environments, those kind of 1 or 2 week camps?
It can, to Neil's point, provide the player and with an experience that's different and open their minds to different ideas and to different habits for sure. Now, for those habits to stick, yeah, that's a different story. Sometimes some of the kids will take it and run with it. Some will not. The club that they're currently playing for, and what are the what are the habits that club is trying to instill in their players comes into play also. If one of our players is going somewhere else for a short amount of time, being an academy director, I get skeptical for sure. I have heard, players who went for a short amount of time and came back with just a different appreciation for the game, especially when they go to a place like Catalonia where it is world renowned, and they start to see it and open their eyes a little bit, and they come back with a different appreciation for the game if they haven't previously been exposed to something like that.
But Patrick, as a director, I know you've done a coaching program in France. We talked about it in our episode. Don't you feel that Nil's professorial knowledge would be more beneficial to the coaching rank than it would be to the players when it comes to coming to the United States?
Probably both. I think the players could certainly benefit from hearing different voices for sure, and especially coaches that are, have worked at a high level in different countries. That's beneficial to players, and certainly for coaches. Coaches are thieves. We're always looking for new ideas and new ways of even just saying similar concepts. You say it differently, or it rings true to you, and you pick up on different types of language or clear ways to explain concepts.
I love that. So help me out a little bit here, Coach Nil. What would you say are what is, in your eyes, a legitimate short program? The reason I'm asking these questions is because a lot of my colleagues have spent huge amounts of money on these kind of European travels and things. And many times you have the experience, which is just the fun of the kid. And that's really all that counts at the end of the day. But I think every parent deep inside always feels like, okay, well, maybe somebody's going to see my kid or something's going to come out of it. And everybody's got a nice website and a good brochure. What would you say are kind of the red flags or the things that somebody should look at or ask before they join programs like that?
Okay, so first, I fully agree with what Patrick just said. We don't do magic. We want the players to improve, and that's what we seek, right? I think that what we mainly can achieve in 1 week for the player to experience how football is coached in Spain, in Barcelona. And then set some ideas that then the player from there, he can go. We've had probably very close to 200 players that they come for our journeys here in Barcelona, where they can play, they can compete with the best clubs here in Barcelona, and they can, train with different coaches, very high level, and they get this assessment and so on. And we don't do magic. What Patrick said is that it opens their mind. They always go back to their countries with a different mindset because they saw that what they were doing, maybe it was not enough, or that there's other ways to do, or that they saw that player doing it that way. Usually, if I had to conclude, the biggest asset or value that we can give to the player is that we can really open his mind. We can give answers to what he's doing wrong, what he's not doing wrong, what he's doing well, what should he keep doing, what he needs to completely change,
So if I see Barcelona AFC agent looking at you, I say, I know, maybe not.
That's not going to happen. Yeah, that's not going to happen because they are not allowed directly so. But one thing that I hate is the bubble effect. I've seen families moving from different countries, many countries, let's say United States, and they come here. They are in a bubble because they come from the United States and they end up playing with more players from the United States. And they don't actually play with local players or local coaches, And it's like, why did you move from the other of the world to keep playing or doing as you were doing before? I see plenty of organizations doing things like this. We have something local. I need to have something local very strong. So I work with local players. And then I need that the players that come from abroad, they can be part of this local system. And so both parties can benefit one to the other. And then when the international player comes, if they, eventually they stay, because for a family matter, they want to stay because it's never football. It's always other things. Then we can continue to help the player on the transition, to guide them, to go to be this bridge between the club and the player, to help them individually and so on. If you are going to do something, you have to really ask before, who am I going to play with? Who am I going to, who's going to coach me? And these players, where they play.
No, I got what you're saying. I got exactly. No, it's a really good distinction. So who would you think is a good candidate for this kind of experience as far as a player profile?
So first, yes. Any player can benefit from it actually, because at the end, because also here, there's many different levels. Of course, almost all of the players that we've had, they are seeking the highest levels. We need players that are first humble, We need players that they are willing to do more than what they have doing, and to understand that there's different ways, not better, because we're not talking about better ways, we're talking about different ways, right? So we need players to be able to be getting this feedback. We need players who are smart and have this adaptability, within themselves, because they will have to adapt, because language barriers, systems, and so on, it's very different. And then it really depends on the stages, right? Because depending on the stage that they will have to dominate more one structure or the other. Whether it's conditional or coordinative or cognitive or so on. If the player is confident and if he's not shy, if you are afraid of failing, then that's not going to help, because you won't have the time sometimes to develop.
What's Patrick? You're the only English-speaking native here. What's the opposite of shy?
Being bold, being conversational,
outgoing, or
outgoing. Yeah.
So that helps.
Yeah. I want to ask you both a question, because we're very lucky to have two people with enormous experience in youth soccer. In your experience on the American side, do you think it's a better experience for a kid to do a 1 or 2 week immersive experience where it's revolving around training in another system? Or do you think these tournament summer tours are more beneficial for the kids?
I think the variable is the kid and the teams, right? What are they going to be able to, and really what is the experience in both environments? So that all comes down to what are they going to be able to absorb in a relatively short amount of time. So if they go over there and they're training once a day with all American kids, like Neil's describing, then yeah, you're probably not absorbing that much. If you're at a tournament where you're seeing teams from all over Europe and you're hearing different languages, you're seeing different types of players, you're hearing different types of coaches and different types of strategies on the field, then that's going to be a really rewarding experience, because your mind is going to be trying to process a lot and figure out which way is up at times. So, but I could also envision a training environment that could offer that as well, where it's very robust, it's very well thought through. You're on the field a couple times a day, and I think it's less which environment is better and really what is the quality and the depth that both of those environments can provide.
No, absolutely, I fully agree. But at the end, usually the tournaments, they are short games. Like it's usually like 20 minutes game, 30 minutes game, 40 minutes
Correct.
games. It's very easy to try to not concede goals. So the difference that you can actually tell on a game that are, like usually this short, and that usually the clubs, they don't want to take so many risks. So I think that sometimes they are not so different from what maybe you are used to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think that in the training, I think that more things happen. I think that you can actually see in the training, you can see creativity and talent. Because if you're going for an experience like this, you want to have something different from what you have. So I think that maybe trainings, they make this be closer to what you might have.
I spent a couple of weeks in Brazil at one point. I was in college at the time, and getting the personal feedback, and having those coaches who coach at a very high level point out things that I was doing well, that I wasn't doing well. I remember that. That's something that sits with me forever.
Yeah, and even those tournaments, right? Most of the times, the boys leaving the United States will do it with the same group of kids that they're with in the United States, going with two or three parents or coaches that they already know. So as far as their chemistry and cohesive environment, they're the same. They're just transferred. So I'm not saying it's not fun, but the more I hear this, it just sounds like an immersive training experience sounds like a lot more enriching.
But what do you see is a viable pathway forward for an American player to get an opportunity and maybe work his way through the ranks?
Okay, so any player, they need to understand that anything they do, it's not a short, it's a long ride. So first, what they have to understand is that the main thing that for the player to speak Spanish. That's the first thing. We have players that they are moving because the family has to move for job or work, whatever. And they have this concern that, no, I gotta play in honor division. But you need to first learn the language so you can communicate. Then once you learn the language, there will be many things that you are doing that you will have to do differently. So you will need to build this confidence, to understand the game. They need to go step by step. I've had players here that they were moving and they had opportunities to start playing at the highest level. but I told them to wait and to play in the second best, because then usually you will have a more important role. You will play more minutes. The quality of the minutes will be higher. You will be able to fail more because you won't be so afraid of of not doing well, and that really builds the confidence. I mean, every step that you do from there, it's more solid. Whereas if you start at the top, I'm not saying that you cannot start at the top. It really depends on the level. We have players that they started at the top and now they are signing for Barca. So of course you can do this, but it really depends on the level. But you need very solid steps. So usually it's starting with somewhere where you are challenged, because you need to be challenged and you won't come from the United States to not be challenged. Yet at the same time, you need space to develop, to have the confidence and also you need to be happy. You need to have fun on the trainings. If you are over pushed, the kid's not going to have fun. And if he doesn't have fun, he's not going to learn as much because he won't go. He doesn't want to go to the training because he's afraid. We didn't talk enough about the joy of playing football, because we were talking about where we want to get, but we won't get anywhere if the kid doesn't enjoy every step of it. So we gotta push the players, yes. We gotta push the kids, yes, in terms of values of trying to do the best, yes. But always try to guide them in a way that they love what they do. The moment they stop loving what they do, then everything it's done. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah. I'm going to send my son to learn Spanish immediately and work on my papers. But Nil, you gotta, others' misery makes me feel a little bit better. So you gotta come and tell us here right now. There's got to be something missing in Catalan youth soccer that you see that you want to improve on. Can't be perfect.
No, absolutely. And as it's good that we have this system where the player is pushed, but at the same time, I feel that sometimes players are treated as if they were, for example, an orange. Because the clubs are very dedicated onto winning because they need to keep the divisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that makes that in the system we have, every year you have many signings. The players, they don't continue 1 year from the other. Some of them do, but some of them don't. You see sometimes clubs making like an entire new squad for the next season. What happens is that the club, they need to assure that they have these divisions. So what happens is that the club, they create squads year by year. And sometimes they sign based on what that player is going to perform, right? Not on the next year, on the very next year. So this means that usually you grab the orange, you grab the player, you squeeze it, you take the orange out of it, and then once it doesn't give me any more juice, you throw it on the garbage. And that is what I was relating with creating safe spaces where the player can actually create and he can be creative and try things. Because what happens is that many games, since you don't want to lose, so you're more destroying than creating. So that means that you don't allow the player to be creative, because usually you don't want to concede goals and you don't want the players to have mistakes. Then you will probably try to limit the amount of different situations that the player can be part of, because you want to control the game as a coach, so you don't want an open game. So then the player, instead of having 10 different actions, he will have 3, and we'll try to make this player the best at those 3. And if we do the same with every player, we have a very systematic way of play, which we will control the game. So with this, I'm kind of like critic with the system we have here, and that's why I'm not part of the clubs anymore here.
So the system is bigger than the player.
Yes, yes, absolutely. The player is I think I was going over the top here. I was gonna say he's a big team. Of course, it's not a big team, because at the same time, we would not create the players that we create if we didn't have this system.
Of course.
So you cannot
Everybody
separate both. You cannot separate both.
Okay, so I feel a little bit better, but not so much. It didn't solve all my problems. Patrick, any closing comments, or we're going to let Coach Nil go to his, of course, 10 o'clock dinner in Spain, which is a normal time for them to eat dinner.
No, I appreciate the time. Enjoyed the conversation, Nil.
We're going to get to see you very soon, I hope, right?
Yes, we're hoping to be in the United States this summer.
How can our viewers and listeners contact you?
So they can go to EOS Football website or Instagram, social media, and so on. Anyone who wants to be in touch with us, they can reach us in EOS Football, EOS football.com. And yes, we're gonna be in the summer in the United States. We're gonna be in different states. We're gonna be in California. We're gonna be in New Jersey. We hope to be also like in Canada. We're still like finishing the details. But yeah, we hope to see you all like very soon, of course.
How do you say wow in Catalan? Whew, this one was a lot of information for my small brain. And what I appreciated about Neil is that he kept bringing to this conversation the game itself. He was relentless on that. He said, don't focus on a badge, not a fantasy, no sales pitch. At least that's what it felt, just the game. One line from him really captures the whole thing for me. If you're training without purpose, you're not training football, you're training bull. That is a tough line because it's very useful, but very nuanced. A lot of kids today are doing a lot of private training, extra touches, camps, technical work, etc. But Neil's point is that none of that means very much if it doesn't transfer to the game. If it doesn't help the players solve pressure, recognize space, and move the ball faster, or help the team.
Yeah, absolutely. From a developmental standpoint, I resonated with a lot of what he was saying about how you can set up technical problems, you can set up tactical problems, but they have to be realistic to the game at the highest levels. And it sounds like he's very aware of what these kids may experience in a year or two or five, and it's important that all the players and their parents are understanding what type of environment is out there and what they're striving for.
Yeah, the word environment, right, Pat? I mean, maybe that's the best way to actually listen to this episode, but not as should I send my kid to Spain, but really what kind of environment is actually shaping my kid right now? Maybe we're focusing on the wrong stuff sometimes. What kind of training is actually challenging for my kid? Because if the environment is not stretching a player, then all this activity in the world, all that effort can leave him short when the real game begins. So that was Nil Congost. And Pat, I got to say, please come back. I'll probably be with Matt next time, and we'll have the viewers judge which one is better. But you really raised the bar here. And if you enjoyed this episode, everybody, please subscribe to wherever you get your podcast. Follow us on YouTube. Send this one to another soccer parent who's trying to make sense of it all or packing their bags to Spain right now.
Appreciate it, Laurent. I'll hopefully be back soon.
Yeah, I can't wait, brother. All right. Ciao.
Ciao.